it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire is to love and adore you with all of my heart, with all of my soul forever. Lord, I fall at your altar in sweet surrender, and I've never known mercy so tender. It's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire is to love and adore you with all of my heart, with all of my soul forever. Lord, I fall at your altar in sweet surrender, and I've never known mercy so tender. It's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire is to love and adore you with all of my heart, with all of my soul forever. Lord, I fall at your altar in sweet surrender, and I've never known mercy so tender. It's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire is to love and adore you with all of my heart, with all of my soul forever. Lord, I fall at your altar in sweet surrender, and I've never known mercy so tender. It's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus. Jesus, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire is to love and adore you with all of my heart, with all of my soul forever. Lord, I fall at your altar in sweet surrender, and I've never known mercy so tender. It's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet. I bow down at your feet. Bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at your feet. I bow down at your feet. Bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire is to love and adore you with all of my heart, with all of my soul forever. Lord, I fall at your altar in sweet surrender, and I've never known mercy so tender. It's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet. I bow down at your feet. Bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at your feet. I bow down at your feet. Bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire is to love and adore you with all of my heart, with all of my soul forever. Lord, I fall at your altar in sweet surrender, and I've never known mercy so tender. It's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet. I bow down at your feet. Bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at your feet. I bow down at your feet. Bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire is to love and adore you with all of my heart, with all of my soul forever. Lord, I fall at your altar in sweet surrender, and I've never known mercy so tender. It's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever.
Proverbs. Gonna finish up. Boy, I mean, I was sitting there thinking, just skimming the surface of about money and wealth and how to use it. There is so much. And so if you think of something that I'm missing, man, shout it out, raise your hand, because these are just some basic things that I kind of thought. But of course, last time we talked about wealth and generosity. Now, we talked about God cares about how we get our wealth, and now we're talking about how we use our wealth. And of course, wealth is more than money. We understand that, but we don't want to, specifically, we won't want to dismiss what it is talking about in terms to possessions and material goods and money. But how we use it how we honor God with it. Uh, the story about the dad who gave his daughter, a little girl, $2 bills and said, one of these you have to give to God, and one of them you can use however you want. And boy, she was excited, and she took off to go to the candy store to get some candy, and on the way, she fell and she dropped that dollar in the drain and lost it. But she got up and said, well, Lord, I'm sorry, that was your dollar. Aren't we kind of like that sometimes? We're like, giving God the first. How we view money, how we use money, it matters to God. And so, of course, I think about when Jesus watched people. Have you ever watched people? I know some people are people watchers. I first kind of learned that from my father-in-law, Maggie's dad, John. He would say, now, you're going to go to a lot of stores and outlet malls, and you just need to learn to just be patient and just watch people. And I would sit out sometimes with him, and we'd watch people. And he'd nudge me and say, look at that over there. You'd see all kinds of interesting things. I think Jesus was a people watcher. And I don't just think, I have example, because he's in the temple, remember, and what's he doing? He's watching. And they're giving, people are putting in large amounts, and they had these drums that would, and you hear these coin, kind of like you've seen coin drops where you can hear it, and you throw the quarters and a bunch of change in, it kind of rattles and bangs. Well, they would throw large money in, and it would just, the sound, and you can imagine, I imagine the apostles especially were, wow, look at that. And Jesus is watching, remember, of course, and focuses on that widow and her 2 mites, copper coins, 2 pennies. And Jesus said, she gave more than everyone else. They gave out of their abundance. She gave all that she had. That is, she gave what she was living off of. And he said, that is the heart that God is looking for. And so how we use, it's not a dollar amount. It's how we use it. And so what do we put our trust in? And so let me ask you this. How have you seen or used, maybe even benefited from wealth and generosity? How's that brought you joy when you think about wealth and your money, your possessions, things of that nature? How have you seen it? How have you been blessed? Maybe how's that brought you joy even? And you don't have to give, personal examples like the time I gave somebody a bunch of money, but just when have you been blessed by that when it comes to the wealth of how you used it, how you've received it? Or what do you think about the benefit, the blessing, the joy? What?
I had an uncle that, things happen in life that catch you off guard,
Uh-huh.
unaware. He said when he passed, he willed all of his nieces and nephews $5,000 each,
Wow.
which we had no idea that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then when it happened, well, his daughter, she just enjoyed it immensely to be able to connect with each one of the
Wow.
cousins,
Yeah.
and
What a gift. Yeah.
and it came and helped a lot of people do a lot of things that was just surprising.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think? Have you been blessed by any time or anything comes to mind? What has been a blessing to you? Again, without giving, if you want to give a specific, that's fine even, but just what's been a general blessing you've found out of using your possessions or wealth? Well, yeah, you don't give examples, but just, in general nature, how have you been blessed by that or been surprised even?
Well, I know some people that like picked up our tab at a restaurant
Mm-hmm.
and not know who did it, and that kind of just
Yeah.
makes you think, who was that, and they got a great joy out of it, and I've done that again to folks.
Yeah.
Just for the fact that it's a great
Have you been really moved, been moments you've been really moved by someone's response to, and again, even if it's a small amount, like paying for somebody's dinner, or, I mean, doesn't that sometimes catch you off guard when you realize, wow, I didn't know that was going to mean that much to them. And maybe it wasn't even the amount, but sometimes when you do good to someone or you share your wealth or your generosity or your possessions, maybe that was just what they were looking for, needed maybe at that moment. Have you ever found that to be the case where they go, you don't know what this means because I've had a lot of doors closed. I've been searching for a job, or I've been this and that, and just you doing that, just, of course, and you're sitting there thinking, well, I just loaned you my car to go to the store, or I just bought your dinner, and, Maggie. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Yeah, Matt? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I ran across a quote from Mark Twain, so you never can let one of those just, not be used. Some men, um, some men worship rank, some worship heroes, some worship power, some worship God. And over ideals they dispute and cannot unite, but they all worship money. I think there's a lot of truth in that. Humans may have a lot of differences and different things they're loyal to and they give their devotion to, but we know the love of money is powerful, and how we use our money and what we do with it is going to say a lot. And so when we use our money, we're saying something about the God that we worship, right? Or we're saying something about what we do worship and what we do put our trust in. And so it really goes back to this, putting God at the forefront of all that we do. And so a couple of things here, and these are real basic. This list tonight, you're going to go, well, that's just basic, Robert. Well, I think just a reminder, and again, we can add to it if we want to, but I didn't want to keep going another week or two on this topic so much. We honor God with it for His glory. The little girl, that wasn't, sorry, God, that was your, she's got to learn, right? But how much are we like that little girl sometimes, right? So let's look at Proverbs 3, 9, and 10. Who's got that for us? Okay, Ron, Proverbs 3, 9, and 10.
Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all of your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine.
So what do you think about honoring God with your wealth? What comes to mind here, especially as he talks about the first fruits? And I mean, what comes to mind there? What do you think about how we do that, or the process of how that should work? What do you think about honoring God with your wealth, the first.
Well, putting him first
Okay.
would be a great honor to the
So
pastor.
what would that look like? How does that?
Tom.
The top. You ever heard the old sayings? Of course, writing checks, right? We don't write checks hardly anymore. We every now and then do, of course. But the first check you write of the month, you've heard the old saying, for the Christian should be what? This is the Lord. This is what I'm giving to God. And I've determined, and again, I understand things happen. But I mean, the roof doesn't fall in every week, does it? It doesn't. In my experience, it doesn't fall in every week. Does it fall in sometimes? Yes, it does. And I think the Lord understands. We understand there. But as I set my budget, as I live my life, what's the first thing I ought to be thinking about when it comes to my money is the Lord, right? Instead, what happens a lot of times, and again, we've all probably been there at some point, we're not trying to beat anybody up. Well, after I've done everything, paid everything, what's kind of left, right? To give God.
10% of what's left.
10% of what's left, right? Yeah. Kind of like they were, in a way, they were doing that in Israel sometimes when they were getting, well, that lamb, he ain't gonna live long anyway, so I'll give that to God, right? They were bringing their sick and weak animals to the Lord, and he said what? And what the proverb echoes is what? You give from what? Not just flocks, but from the what? The best, the flocks, the field. And they were, of course, in that kind of society. And so I think for me, it's the process. Am I honoring the Lord in my money and my possessions, that I see Him in that? That I'm using that for Him and His purposes and His kingdom and for His glory and His honor. And I mean, I'm actively thinking about Him when I'm being blessed, when I have my possessions. I think that's a process we need to have constantly. Matt? Oh, sure. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, they usually go together, kind of, Paul will talk about, share what you have and do good. They kind of often are one and the same, whether it's showing up on an afternoon to help someone with your time, your talent, where you could be doing something of yourself. You could be working at your business. You could be, absolutely, absolutely. And so I think it's the process, too, that we really have to, actively put God in my thinking when it comes to my possessions, my wealth, my money, that I'm honoring. It becomes a part of the whole process. You don't go through it without thinking about God, is what I'm saying. He becomes a part of that process. He's not left to the end, and I think that's what he. And I think this would include, when it comes to honoring Him with, and I kind of, you could put these under categories of this or separate categories, but paying our debts. Isn't that a way we honor God with our money? The proverb writer talks about that. Proverbs 3, who's got 27 to 28 there in the same chapter that Ron read for? Okay, Dolores, yeah. Okay, just a good reminder about giving, not withholding that. We're going to come back to that as well. But with not withholding is the idea there. See that again? Don't withhold good from those to whom it is due. Now, there it's not talking about just being generous and kind. It's talking about someone that's due. And so one of the contexts we would put would be workers, employees and workers. Pay your workers, right? Uh, the Bible speaks about that, the importance of that. Don't abuse your workers. Um, you know, um, and again, another example I think also would be with pay your debts. Now we know because you don't want to be a slave to the lender, but you also said you'd pay something back. You made a commitment. Maybe you had a contract. Maybe it's a house or a car. And yet, how many times have people just walk away? They just walk away. Yeah, come get it, right? I mean, and again, I understand sometimes job and you get sick and the roof falls in. I understand, but that's not the reason why most people, right, walk away from those kind of responsibilities. It's too hard to what? To pay it, to make the sacrifices, to commit, and it's just, just back off. Walk away from that. And so pay to those that it's due. That's how we honor God. You know, I think that's real important. We kind of have a society that wants to get out of paying what they should pay. People have become, if they can get out of having to pay for it, especially something that they've already received, goods, services, it's just epidemic. It's becoming where people just, I don't know, I don't want to have opinion about the school loans and all that, but we paid ours off. And I understand. And now if you get a chance to go work and the government will pay for your loans, if you work in a low, poor neighborhood school, or I understand there's opportunities, but the point is, it's honorable to pay off what you've borrowed, what you've loaned. Yeah, go ahead. I see a hand over here. Thought I saw a hand. Over this way. Yeah, Susan. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It is a. That's right. That's right. It's not always easy to pay our debts, is it? It's not easy to give God the first. How about paying taxes? Dolores again read this verse for us. Don't withhold to whom it's due. Well, Romans 13, nobody likes that verse, but it says, pay taxes and also don't owe anyone to whom it is due. Don't turn your back and walk away on, what you're supposed to do when it comes to your financial commitments. Pay to whom it's due. And we know that this is the government and Caesar they come a-calling, don't they? And our responsibility is to honor God. We don't have to like it, but honor God by paying that, which is, yeah, Jeff? Okay. Yeah. 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 I think the idea there, it's a little bit, what translation is that? NIV? Yeah. I think that is not, yeah. The idea here is to whom it is due, to whom one is obligated to pay something back. And so, absolutely, we like to put that qualifier. Let me just say this in Leviticus 19. You find this passage. Leviticus, because we're talking about how we use our wealth to honor God. We've talked about some examples. Give first to God. You can talk about your church. You can talk about, general giving, which we'll kind of come back to. So I don't want to go off yet on just, well, we're supposed to just give generally to. We'll come to that in just a minute. We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about specifically whether it's the financial commitment that we need to make to the Lord on the first day of the week, or paying taxes, or paying those that we owe money to, paying our workers. In this section, Leviticus 19, and by the way, it begins here with this familiar quote that we're familiar with. Verse 2, speak to the entire assembly of Israel and say to them, look, the first thing Moses says, tell the people, be holy because I am what? You guys know it. We sing it, holy, and we sing, I want to be holy. And what does that look like? Well, he gives all these examples. And after many of these examples, he says, you're to do this because I am the Lord your God. And so he's going to talk about, don't defraud, don't lie, don't curse, pervert justice. And he'll say throughout this refrain, often, because I am the Lord your God. Because I am the Lord your God. He'll get down here at verse 13. Do not defraud or rob your neighbor. Don't hold back the wages of a hired worker overnight. Do not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block in front of them, but fear the Lord your God. Fear your God. I am the Lord. Pay those that are due. Why? Because it honors the Lord. It honors God. When I'm making that house payment or car payment or paying off that loan or writing the check to the government or whatever it might be, or putting that money in the I was going to say the offering plate, the box, or the online, digital, weekly, whatever we're doing, okay? Again, we're not talking about, well, I do good with my money. I'm not talking, we're talking about some specific areas. I'm honoring God in that way, and I think we got to always remember that. It is we may not always like it every time, but we can grow to really know that we're honoring God in some of those specific areas. And so honor God with how you use it in regard to some of these responsibilities. Look here, number 2, providing for your family. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but it is worth. I love the example of the proverb worthy woman in Proverbs 31. Somebody get 21 and 22. Proverbs 31, 21, 22. Who's got that? Okay, Havana. Okay. Notice how the needs of her family are met. They don't have to worry when the winter comes. She has provided for her family. And I think that it's a beautiful reminder of the responsibility. You remember in the New Testament, you have that example when they tell Jesus, we can't give to our parents to take care of them because we've devoted this Corban. This was money devoted, set aside. Now here's the trick about that. They actually hadn't used it yet to give to God. They were using that income, but kind of setting it aside to say, when I'm ready to give it to God, this money's going to go to God, even though they were still using it themselves, on themselves. And so there's a little trick there in the context of how that was played out culturally in the first century Jewish concept. But you remember he says, they say, we honor our parents. He says, no, because you're not providing for their needs. You honor them when you're young by obeying them. You honor them when they're older by taking care of their needs physically, materially, financially. And of course, you know 1 Timothy 5 and verse 8, if anyone does not provide for his own, he's denied the faith. And so you provide for your family. And I would say kind of coming under this, this would include generosity and gifts that you give to your family. I love the statement Jesus makes there in Matthew 7 and verse 9 and 11. If you as earthly fathers know how to give good gifts to your children, right? The proverb writer talks about an inheritance that you leave for your children. So there's nothing wrong with giving gifts and leaving gifts to your children and grandchildren and providing for them in gifts because our Heavenly Father, earthly fathers know how to do that, he says. How much more so does your Heavenly Father give to you what you need? Now, I heard a statement from a member a long time ago, and you've heard this general advice. Be careful lending money to your family. And this brother, I remember what he said. Don't lend it to your family. Give it as a gift. And this is basically what he said. If it comes back to you, great. If it doesn't, you won't get your feelings hurt. I thought it was a pretty good principle. Give it as a gift. If it comes back, great. But you know the old statement about family and money. How many fallen outs have you seen? Because money gets involved, and money's not paid back, or a loan, or whatever. And so it's just often just best just to be generous. And so provide for your family is a way that we use our wealth, of course, and I would say by extension the church family would be you'd get that in there as well, of course, among other scriptures we could use. How about invest it wisely? Let's rapid fire now. So I'm going to need you guys to on the hand and help me read. Proverbs 21:16. All right, Maggie. Proverbs 13:22. Ron, and then Jeff, why don't you read Proverbs 22, 23, and 24. All right, Proverbs 21:16. Maggie? What is it? What'd I say? Okay, 27. Thank you. Okay, Proverbs 21:16. Okay, the path of the prudence. The idea there would be investing, being wise with how you use your money when it comes in regard to investments. Let's see if we string these together. Proverbs 13:22. Okay, Ron.
A good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, but a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous.
Okay, there the idea of inheriting and leaving an inheritance. And making an investment in your family versus the sinner who stores it up for themselves. Okay, Proverbs 27. 20. And we'll probably talk about general prudence and wisdom, but this kind of deals a little bit with, hey, be careful when you select your what? Come on, some of you have done that. What's the investment there? The flock, right? Be wise. Because if you don't think about that, on the front end, it's going to what? On the back end? It's going to bite you, right? And of course, they were agricultural farming society. And so their wealth was often all tied up in that. And so, you be careful, you be wise in that regard when it comes to making investments in this regard. All right, look at the general, and that should not be for acquiring wealth. I don't know why. I had changed it out for using wealth. I must have just forgot to do it on these last two, but that should be instructions for using wealth, not acquiring wealth. It's okay to get it by good investments, but all right, be generous in the giving of it. That's what we want. Proverbs 11:24 and 25. Who's got that for me? Okay, Roy, and then somebody get Proverbs 22:9. Okay, Matt. Okay, Roy. Proverbs 11. Yeah, you're all right. Proverbs 11:22 and 24. You're all right.
24 and 25. There is one who scatters, yet increases more. And there is no one who withholds more than is right, but it leads to poverty. The generous soul will be made rich, and he who waters will also be watered himself.
Okay, and again, remember, I inject what I've said multiple times, especially at the beginning, general proverbs, okay? Don't take this as a one-to-one correlation every day. Well, I gave something one and I didn't get it. I understand that. It's a general truth, and I think if you look at your life, I think you would see that mostly. When you've been generous and blessed, tried to be a blessing to others, I bet you 9 times out of 10, you've been blessed at some point because of that. The Lord has provided for your needs. Can some of you attest to that? It may not always come back one-to-one, or it may not even come back to money, financial, but the generosity that we have and not withholding is something that's a blessing to us. And, okay, Proverbs 22:9. Okay, just another admonition about that specifically giving to those who have need, the poor. And so again, this would be beyond just giving to God the first fruits, although this would be a part of that. You would honor God, but now we're getting some specifics of giving to the one who has need, the one who is lacking. And let me see here, Matt. That was verses 24 and 25. 22:9. see here if I wrote down.
Robert, the other thing about
Yeah, go ahead.
giving to the poor, the needy, or those who you see that have need, even if you never get anything, feeling that you've actually
Mm-hmm.
done something, you've helped somebody other than yourself.
Yes. Yeah. This idea of giving freely and gaining more. I think it would, kind of be a little bit with what Paul says. Uh, God loves the cheerful giver. That idea that it's fun, it's enjoyable, it's a blessing to give to others and see that go in the life of someone else, and the joy and the to me, I love Christmas, and I not so much about. I just like seeing other people. I like to give gifts, and to me, it's just fun to watch that joy in those that you know and those that you love, and so he talks about that. Okay, Proverbs 19:17. Who had that? Okay, Dolores.
He who is gracious to a poor man lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his good deed.
Whoever is kind to the poor lends to the what?
Lord.
So Jesus, when he says things, they echo back so much of the truth of the Old Testament that, Lord, when did we see, remember both the sheep and the goats both said, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty and in prison? And to the extent that you did it to what? The least of these, you did it also to what? Me, right? You're really not giving it ultimately to that individual person, right? And not that God needs it, but God receives that in faith, that act, and it's a blessing and honor to Him and to others. And so he who gives to the poor is actually lending to the Lord, and He will reward them for what they've done. Again, that may not always come back one-to-one correlation, but I think a life of being blessed is in that. Okay, Proverbs 28:27. Who'd like to read that? Okay, Ivana. Okay, just another reminder there. We saw that earlier. Now, I think that we have to have discernment. We're not talking about just giving freely and just throwing out money or possessions or, I don't think that's, there needs to be a need. We don't put on blinders. We don't enable. But we do our best when we have the opportunity in front of us to help and do good when we can. And I think that's, our problem is not more often is not that, well, somebody wouldn't use it properly, or, it's often we're just not willing to take the time to help and invest. And as Matt said, that may be our time, that may be our abilities and resources. It's not so much that we're just afraid of somebody may not appreciate it, or may be misusing or squandering something. No, we need to look for those opportunities because that's a true blessing. We're going to look at just a couple of closing comments about losing wealth. But anything else you think about when you think about using your wealth for the Lord's purposes and the Lord's honor and glory? Yeah, Ron?
Well, when I was over at Skytruth, I had a mowing ministry.
A mowing ministry, yeah, I like that.
Go out and I had 16 lawns I was mowing,
Oh,
but I only got paid for 6 of them. But those 6 helped me pay for all the others.
wow.
And one time they would ask me, how much I owe them, and I said, well, just show up at church. Well, one day I had 8 show
Yeah.
up at church together.
Yeah.
They had a different seating, and it makes you feel pretty good.
Yeah.
To be able to do that.
Yeah. Other things you think about using your possessions, wealth, generosity for the Lord. Anything come to mind about how we honor Him and do this? Yeah, back here, Meredith. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the whole point there of Paul is Jesus Christ, though he was rich, he gave what? He became poor for your sake. And so the model there is you give like Christ gave. And he's the example. And when others see generosity, whether it's our time, our skills, whatever it might be, of course our money, they have an opportunity to see Christ. They have an opportunity to see the cross, which is what ultimately motivates the Christian to do and to give, which is because of Jesus gave. Yeah, Jeff? Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 I think you could make a case of some of all the bad characteristics to develop and have children develop at a young age. I think this could be up there. You could make it being stingy, being greedy, being unwilling to what? Share. And I tell you, sometimes how we did it in our house, we'll just take it away if you're not willing to share it. We'll just, I mean, you talk about me coming out of my chair, Maggie will tell you. Because again, last time I checked, my kids didn't pay for any of that. And now they're willing to act ugly. And we'd have it on Christmas Day. You do that again, and I will take that toy away. You will share what? Come on. With your blessing, with your sister, brother. I'll take it away. Well, that's their toy. And I understand that. And we understand it's theirs, and they got to keep it in their room, and you can't just go get it and take it. But I think you could make a case that that's one of the great traits that you could teach a child early on out of all traits is be willing to share. And you know, of course, my wife, I got a kindergarten teacher I'm married to. So, yeah, you don't think she deals with that? But if they don't learn that, what's old book, everything I learned in what? Kindergarten? How much of that is true in life? What I learned and developed at a young age, it's hard to get that out of your heart, huh? When you develop that early on. And so let's be a people who develop that and teach that generosity and sharing. And so we'll close on that there. So much there. Well, appreciate you guys, and thank you for being here tonight. And Lord willing, we'll see you Sunday.